Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the SpookNotes Podcast, where we get academic about everything that goes bump in the night. My name is Marlena.
I'm Connor, and on today's episode, we are doing a first impressions of the brand new film Pet Semetary. And today is a very special episode of First Impressions because we have a guest with us today for the first time ever on the SpookNotes Podcast. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Justin.
The guest.
The very special guest. And I'm Connor's younger brother. And that's how I know them.
Exactly. So, Justin is a big fan of horror movies, just like Marlena and I.
Yeah.
He has, I would say, a pedigree in horror. I mean, like, why don't you explain your history with horror? Just kind of like, what are some of your favorite movies? What do you like about the genre?
Yeah, I think Connor's mentioned it earlier on in the series about me and my favorite horror franchise being Scream. That's not where I began, but that's kind of where I started to get even more interested in paying attention to the new horror movies coming out, whether it's trailers on YouTube or before I go see movies. Always pay attention there. I definitely got into it kind of the same way through Connor with Goosebumps growing up. Reading the books, having my dad reading it to me, and watching. Actually, I was a bit later with the TV shows. Never had that stage, but definitely had some DVDs. And then once it came on Netflix, watching that too. Goosebumps was probably my first initial wave into horror.
Nice,
Cool. That's awesome.
So, as I said, today we're going to be talking about Pet Semetary.
Yes.
So
The new one.
the new one,
That just came out yesterday.
or 2 days ago, I think.
Sure.
Yesterday. Actually, no, it was yesterday. Anyways,
Mhm.
so what we're going to do today, as we do in all first impressions videos, we're going to give our initial reactions.
Our raw opinions. of
Marlena
the
and I
movie.
and Justin have not spoken about what we thought yet. We just saw it, all three of us together, about an hour ago. What I want to do, Marlena,
Yes.
is me and you have both read the book,
Mhm.
and we've both seen the original movie.
Sure have.
Justin you've seen part of the original movie, but not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to, we can maybe do it at the end, but for the most of it, I kind of just want to focus on just this movie without comparing it too much to the original. Just focus on this movie as its own thing.
Okay.
Okay? And maybe we can compare it at the end, but...
Sure.
So, yeah, well, as we always do...
Sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, as we always do, we always give a yes or no recommendation. No other things at the beginning, spoiler-free. So why don't we go on a circle, starting with Marlena. Spoiler-free before we get into our spoilers, yes or no, would you recommend Pet Semetary?
No.
Justin?
I would recommend it as a horror movie. If you're a horror fan, it's a good horror movie.
Okay. I would say if you are a fan of the original book or the original movie, then I would not recommend it. If you are just a general horror fan, I would recommend it.
Okay, well then I
That's what
have
I'm
to
saying.
change my opinion.
Well, would you say you're on the same page as me?
Yes, because I wouldn't recommend this movie for people who have seen the previous movie or read the book, but if you're just like, new to horror and whatnot and want a good spook, go and see this movie.
It's,
Okay.
it's a good horror movie.
Yes.
For what a horror movie should be.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's our spoiler-free section. We just like to keep it brief, and then the rest of it will be full of spoilers.
Alrighty.
So we'll give a second now, silence, and then that's all. That's all the people who haven't seen the movie yet away, and now it's full spoilers, guys. So why don't we start?
Everybody fucking dies. This movie's a piece of shit.
Why don't we start with Justin? Justin, what did you think of Pet Semetary? What did you think?
Yeah, as I said, it is a good horror movie in the way that there are multiple angles to look at it, and there are multiple elements of the film that go to classic traditional horror elements, if that makes any sense. There's definitely some features of good classic horror and then new, deeper looking into it all in a way, but in my opinion, it's pretty straightforward. There's not much to look into. You don't really have to read into it. You can kind of go. It's like one of those movies you could go see on a Friday night and just pick a movie randomly. Oh, let's go see Pet Semetary. There you go. You're gonna get a good horror movie, but that's about the extent of it.
This is a good first date movie, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that.
I would say that.
There we go.
It's funny that you say that, Justin. Before we get to Marlene, it's funny that you say that because I kind of agree with you in the sense that I think that this movie, for me, was very much a surface level horror movie. I think something akin to, I think the Insidious movies are like this too, very surface level. I think that something like that new La Llorona movie looks like. It looks very surface level.
La Llorona.
Where it doesn't really go deep. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't really. There's nothing to examine in this movie, I don't think. And all the scares are also very surface level, and everything is exactly what it seems to be, and it doesn't go any deeper than that. What did you think, Marlena?
Honestly, exactly what you said. It has a lot of jump scares, which
very jump scary.
But they kind of did get me. A few of them.
Yeah, well,
a few of them got me.
But I don't think they were good jump scares though. But
no. Well, two of them that I really liked when she looks up the dumbwaiter and Zelda.
The first time or the second time?
The first time. And then it falls, because the way it fell, like usually with jump scares, it kind of lingers and then you expect it.
Mm-hmm.
But it fell quicker, I think.
Okay.
And that's why it gave me that, like, oh. And also, maybe it's just because we got into a car accident, but anytime, like, the cars, like, just went right across the road, I was like, oh, shit. Jeepies or jinkies. Jeepies.
So, what did you think of it overall, though?
Well, like, I thought it was good as a surface level horror movie. I think it really touched base on, like, the gothic trope of horror versus terror, in my opinion. Would you say that?
But what do you mean by that?
Like, because, like, you have the terror, like, especially with Rachel and her sister, anticipating that things are going to be happening to her. Mm-hmm. But obviously you have the horror aspect of, like, her daughter killing her. Right? I don't know. I was just thinking that going through the movie. I was like, okay, it kind of it's a little bit gothic horror, but...
Yeah, one thing I want to get out of the way, the whole sister and her and Rachel was her name?
Yeah.
So Rachel and her sister kind of thing, it felt like it was like another, like it could have been placed into any movie. It was this side story that really had no effect in the end on the main idea of Pet Semetary. And I feel like, I don't know why they, like, I've never read the book or anything, but I feel like they could have just completely not had that in the movie, and it would have just been less jump scary, and, like, it still would have completed its purpose of what it is trying to get to. I didn't really understand the whole meaning of it. It was just this side thing.
See, and I think they included that for the people who did read the book. Because I agree with you. I think if they took that out completely, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, in the book and the original movie, it serves and I know I'm already kind of...
Yeah, I know, that's the point.
But it's hard not to, now that I think about it. But anyways, it serves the purpose of, like, explaining why Rachel is so adverse to the idea of death, and why she doesn't want to talk about it, and why she is so kind of defensive whenever death is brought up.
Yeah.
But the problem with this movie, in terms of that storyline, is that they did turn it into, like Justin was saying, almost like a going into a haunted house thing, where there's like
jump scare.
Yeah, it's like they didn't. Again, like, this comes back to what I say in my original statement, is that it's very surface level. It's very much just there to have
some more content.
This is the scary woman with the scary back. This is the jump scares. This is coming down the dumbwaiter.
Well, it's like grotesque horror.
Yeah.
That you're seeing those images, and you're like, oh, that's spooky. Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so before we, is there anything that you guys want to specifically talk about that you guys liked about it? What about you, Justin? Is there anything that you could pick out, like, one or two, like, specific things that you actually did really like about it?
I feel like it had a good vibe to it. Mm-hmm. The whole vibe to the movie, like I don't know, like, I've always loved the whole, like, scary forest scene in movies, and, like, when it's done right, it's really good. But when it's done wrong in Slender Man, then it's not good.
So
I'm glad that
Blair
they got
Witch versus Slender
Yeah, so exactly. Like, I love Blair Witch. Blair Witch is probably one of my like the original is probably one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and it's just because like that scary vibe, like stuck out in a forest, and you don't know what's going on. It's a constant madness. Like that was something I loved about it, and the scenery that they were able to create with that, I felt like it was good. It was good, like directing in that sense. That was probably my favorite part of it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think that I've spoken a little bit about this on the podcast before, but I'm a big fan of terror in the woods or horror movies set in the woods. So that's one of my favorite because, well, the whole idea of the woods is that man built civilization to get away from the woods to create a safe space for them. And so as soon as you set characters in the woods, it creates a sense of vulnerability for those characters. Yeah. And it immediately strips them of all the safeties that civilization gives us. Other people, police, phones, everything like that. When you're in the woods, none of that matters. So I like that. And also I like the sense that in this movie, I do one thing I actually will commend this movie for getting a little bit closer to the book is that it's the sense that it's the woods, the nature that's like holding this evil. That is the evil part of it. Now, does it
execute it well?
No.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like, I feel like a lot of the things I could say is like, did the movie really mean to do this? To kind of give the idea that it is like nature itself and the old the earth doing this, or is it like just because?
One thing I have to say about that, okay, like honestly, like I get chills whenever I think about it. Like one thing I really wanted, and there was one scene in particular where when he was going out, what was the main character's name? Lewis was going out to bury his daughter, and you see that scene where he looks into the opening and you see like a slight resemblance of the Wendigo. I just really was digging. Because like halfway through the movie, I could tell that it was a decent horror movie. But like, if I could have been able to see that monster for like in a more clear way, in just my personal opinion, that would have made it so good, and it's like created such a good effect on me if I was able to do it. But they didn't. They stayed with that classic like, it's up to you to figure it out. It's just this monster, but it's more like a being, an entity, not a straight up monster. But I really wish they kind of just showed it just once, just like that classic Wendigo.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I think if they would have included that, the movie would have been a little bit better.
You know, and it's funny because I think they dropped the ball in that sense because, okay, you know what? I actually take back what I said. We'll just have to compare it to the original movie.
Absolutely.
And the book.
Sorry.
In the original movie, like you never see the Wendigo,
No.
Which is a big part of the book because like it was made in 1989. They didn't have the technology to really do it well. It would have looked dumb. And this, my big thing going into this movie, I thought, well, you know, it's 2019. They have all this great CGI. They're going to include that. And then they show it in the book, and I'm like, great, it's going to be in there when Lewis takes Ellie to bury her, but it wasn't, and they kind of just dropped the ball.
Well, yeah, like they introduced this whole phenomenon about the Wendigo and there's a boogeyman in the bush, and well, that's about it.
Yeah, I feel
like
this
just
movie
like stopped. They like gave up.
A big problem with it is that they tend to introduce concepts, but then just don't go anywhere with them. Like the idea of when Ellie. The idea of like, well, where do we go when we die? You know, Lewis says, you know, we just die. That's it. And then Ellie comes back and she's like, you're wrong. Like we go somewhere.
Okay.
And then that's it.
Like,
and then she says, well, then she says, well, it's hell. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? I don't know.
Also, like the whole thing, going into this movie, I thought it was gonna do this whole thing about like pagan rituals because they wear the masks, and like for me, it related a lot to The Wicker Man, right? Seeing all those animal masks, I thought they were gonna like incorporate that more.
Well, it's because it's such a big part in the trailers that I thought it was also.
Well, yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, well, bye. I don't know. I thought the movie did that a lot with.
Let me ask you a question.
Things.
One thing I want to talk about, Justin. Did you see the trailers for this movie before?
I feel like I've seen the trailer for this movie like 100 times.
And you saw the trailer where it showed Ellie dying, right?
Yes.
Okay. But you knew in the original movie, like, it's Gage that dies, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was something me and you talked about on the podcast before, this change.
Yeah.
Now that you saw the movie, do you think that the change from making it Gage to Ellie worked, or do you think not?
No, absolutely not. I thought it ruined the entire movie, if you want to ask me, because the whole point in the book and in the first movie was Ellie's kind of going through this existential crisis about life and death and what happens when we die, because it's happening to her younger brother, like, that can't even speak, right? Like, he's what, like 2? 2 or 3?
Yeah,
I don't know, something like that. But she has that deeper starting to explore that deeper understanding of what happens when you die. But you can't really put that on a 2-year-old or 3-year-old in the new movie. This kid doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like, he wouldn't know if his sister's dead or not.
Well, they did seem to give him the power that Ellie had in the original to kind of see the future a little bit, like when it said that he drew that drawing of her, and him seeing Pascal.
Yeah, but he's not gonna understand what that means, though. He doesn't have that cognitive development. He's like 2. Really?
Yeah, I feel like he was just a character they threw in because he was in the book.
Exactly.
Like, they could have made this movie the direction that they actually did go with it without him, but obviously he's in the book, he's a main character. They're gonna include him, so they just had him there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, to get your ideas of it, what did you guys think of 2 characters that I want to talk about? Judd and Victor, the ghost. What did you guys think of them? Did you guys like them? No?
Because I didn't watch, or I haven't read the book, Victor the ghost, it was kind of confusing at the beginning as to what role he was serving. He kind of like came out of nowhere, and then like he is now, just because he got hit by a car, I'm guessing, that's like what they said happened, yeah. Right? But now he's just like the knower being of all and having this huge influence on him, and like he is a reason why he's going out in the woods and in the middle of the night, and like he's like constantly in his brain talking to him. And I'm like, well, like, what makes this random guy who got hit by a car so special? And like, what purpose is he really serving other than telling him, oh, this place is haunted?
And see, my thing with Victor, we'll talk about Judd after, but my thing with Victor is that in the book, he's more of this kind of benevolent spirit that's trying to help Lewis and trying to kind of like, he's the spirit of good, the symbol of the spirit of good in the book, as opposed to the Wendigo, which is the spirit of evil. But in this movie, because they wanted to make everything scary, he comes across as scary.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And when he said the bond is broken, what did that mean?
The barrier in terms of the
barrier, I mean.
The deadfall, like the bunch of trees, like the Indians built that because they didn't want people going over. So that's like the barrier that's broken.
But how is it broken?
When Lewis goes over it to go to the.
But by the time that did that happen after he buried the cat?
Yeah. Or I think, because I think that's when he's going to bury Ellie, right? That he sees Victor again.
No, but like when Lewis first came up, like when he was first in the room, did that happen after he buried the cat? Or did it happen before?
No, okay, so Victor got hit by the car, and he's just like, yo, like, here's a warning, don't, like, go over the thing. And Lewis is like, okay, what the fuck are you talking about? And then later on...
Then he went on and buried the cat.
No. So then he had a dream, and then he was walking outside, and then that's when he's just like, yo, like, actually don't go over this deadfall, like, you're gonna cause all hell to break loose. And Lewis is like, okay, I don't care. And then buries the cat, and then... Yeah,
so it happened before it, but he said the barrier is broken.
Did he?
He said the barrier is not meant to be broken, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Justin's right.
Okay.
But I think that is not saying that it's already broken. I think that's just saying don't.
Like, as a second
So is this guy coming to, like, everybody in the world? What makes this guy so special?
Exactly.
Because he owns the land?
Right.
So now you're bringing in, like, oh, because you own the land, you're the one who might break the barrier.
But
don't break the barrier.
But who the fuck is this guy to Lewis? He's just like some random dude who got hit by a car.
This is why I was saying this movie didn't really get any deeper than the surface level. But in the book, it's the idea that Victor is the symbol of life, because that's when Lewis is like, because Lewis is a doctor, it's his job to keep people alive, and when he was giving him CPR, he's saying like, come back to me, come back, because he's like, dead already at that point. And so it's the idea that for Lewis, Victor is the symbol of trying to save life and trying to, but through science, like through his job as a doctor, through like, altruistic, not through like this like weird dark magic, you know?
Okay.
And even there's that line in this movie where Judd says, like, a rational mind like yours, Lewis, wouldn't be able to understand it. And I feel like that's almost why the cemetery has so much power over Lewis, because
he's very much scientific.
He's very scientifically minded. He's a doctor. You know, he's just thinking about this as ones and zeros, whereas it's something, you know, darker than that.
It's hard for him to comprehend what
is going on.
Is bigger out there. Yeah.
I wish he would have died in like Victor would have died in like a more if they're gonna go this route, a car crash, and he's just randomly now this important character.
Yeah, no, like I think also again it just comes back down to they just want to make everything scary. He's scary now. He's gory. He's like, oh yeah, like blood. Ugh.
This guy, what did he like skate along the ground to make that brain come out?
And it's funny that this is a full-grown man that's hit by a car, and that's what he looks like. But yet Ellie, it gets hit by a fucking 10 ton.
And she's like, I'm fine.
They just didn't want to. Yeah, she has a lazy eye now, so they just didn't want to. They didn't want to like go that way with children, which I guess in a way that's whatever.
But in like the first movie, they didn't really give a shit.
But I mean, even
it's very much 2019.
Yeah, everybody is offended by everything.
Okay, so what about Judd then? What do you guys think of Judd?
Who's going first?
Why don't you go first, Connor?
Okay.
You're not giving your opinion on it.
I thought he, as an actor, was fine. He wasn't as good as Fred Gwynn in the original.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
I thought again it suffered from the same problem as Victor, is that he's scary for some reason in scenes, which I don't get that. But also it does the same problem as the original movie, that there seems to be no reason why he shows Lewis the Pet Semetary or the Mac burial ground.
Well, yeah, because in the book and in the first movie, there's kind of a reason why.
Well, no,
especially the book.
Yeah, in the book there is, but not the movie. In the book, remember, the reason is because Lewis saved his wife from dying. Yeah, which neither movie has.
But like in the first movie, like there's more of a connection between Judd, the family, and Judd and Lewis. And then Judd and Ellie, more specifically, because he's like the grandfather of her, like plays that role. Plays that role. So he feels like, well, this is my grandbaby. Like I feel bad. Like I don't want her to be sad.
I'd say that's just the same as this movie.
No way, because he's so disconnected as a character.
There's no sense. In this movie, Ellie plays like that role of like that loving, like person that fills the heart of Judd in this movie. That's why, like, when in the scene where like she's about to kill him, he sees her as both her and his wife, because Ellie was able to fill that role in his like heart that he never had for so long. So when he feels like this love that he's never felt for so long from another, like, I don't know, person, let's say, it's just like he just becomes so attached to it, and he doesn't want to break that no matter what. And he feels like, oh, if I know that she's not gonna like this, so like, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure she's still happy, because Judd's never felt this happy ever since his wife. And
see, that's a very good point, but I think they should have reinforced on it more.
Well, one thing I will actually say that I kind of liked about this movie, that's something actually I thought about before with this story, is I do like the fact that they bring up how Judd brought his dog back to life, and his dog was mean and evil. But just because you bring one thing back to life and it becomes like that, and even said his dog was kind of mean before, you, as a person, you wouldn't immediately jump to, well, it's evil and everything's evil. You'd be like, well, maybe that was just this one case. And then when Church came back and Church was also mean, then it's like, okay, then I know. Yeah. So that's why I do like that. And that's why, obviously, when after Ellie died, Judd was so like, you know, Lewis, you can't do it. And
but he didn't care as much. That's the problem I had, like, with the two Judds. Is new Judd was just like, don't do it, Lewis. And then other Judd was like, Lewis, you can't fucking do it. Oh, yeah.
Did Judd bring back his wife? Or no?
No.
So then, like, I guess he just saw her as just another figure for Ellie and, like, connection.
Yeah, but, like, in the first movie and in the book, he does see a person being brought back to life, and they're not the same. And he helped whomever brought them back to kill them. Yeah. It was like a whole process.
They could have done that.
Yeah. I was surprised they left that out, actually. But yeah, I mean, one thing I want to touch on is I thought there was a few plot holes that this movie had that kind of ruined some of it for me.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys about. Okay, when Ellie goes on the road and she sees Church on the road, and then she gets hit by the thing, wouldn't Church also be dead then? Because Church was right there.
You saw Church run away.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. Well, then another thing is that, oh man, what was I going to say?
It's almost like Church had like this overruling on the driver, that like Church was there and the driver wasn't paying attention because Church was there, and once Church like ran away, the driver like pulled up and then moved away.
True.
So like he had this it's sort of like this power that you get once you come back.
Yeah, true.
And that's kind of like the same power it had on Judd in the book and in the first movie.
Yeah,
Power of
and
the Micmac burial ground.
And Judd came back in the first movie?
No. I think
no,
she...
but like the power of the burial
yeah.
ground like influenced him, and he couldn't stay awake and to stop Lewis and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
The other question I had then, why? Because this is not something that you see in Church or even in the older movies, but it seems like it's suggesting in here. Is it suggesting that when Ellie comes back, she has like supernatural powers, like like strength, super strong?
Yeah,
I guess
I was
so.
kind of
Because,
wondering about that.
When you see both Rachel and Lewis like fighting with her, you're like, it's like a 9-year-old girl. Couldn't you just pick her up? And,
It is suggesting that she has it.
like supernatural strength or something.
Yeah, when you die, you get those gains.
No,
you
because
know?
like, did you in the final scene, like basically where he's holding her back and she like starts moving at super exorcism speed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so like that's a point where like you can get confirmed. Like, yes, she is super powerful.
Yeah. Okay, well, since we're there, what did you guys think of the ending? Like the whole like final sequence once Rachel comes back to the house and then Ellie becomes like Michael Myers.
Like, I don't know. I kind of liked the ending with everybody turning all evil, like an evil family.
Yeah, that was my least favorite part.
Well, like, it's stupid. It's absolutely terrible.
At that point, it almost became
the best,
laughably bad.
But I know, that's why I like
but they
it.
all
It was...
come. I feel like I've seen that in a movie before, where they all come with like a fucking gas tank, and they start walking.
Like,
no, literally, I don't know if you guys heard me, but like when Lewis has like the spade and he's about to kill Ellie, and then he gets stabbed in the back, like I was like laughing at that point.
Well, I could tell. I was like, Jesus, keep
I
it
heard
down
you.
over there.
So,
Connor's like, yeah.
I don't know, Justin. What did you think of the ending?
I feel like I can't remember what movie that is, or maybe it's a survival movie where they come out over the hot steamy road with a can of gasoline to start their car. But it literally reminded, like, okay, so like they set this other house on fire for shits and giggles. Like,
Yeah,
they
at
just
that point,
didn't.
why didn't they bring Judd back to life too?
Yeah, like they just wanted to set him on fire.
They might as well just take over the world
And then,
by that logic.
Yeah,
Like,
so like, and then they like they were in between. I feel like this movie was in between a level of we want to show that we're violent and we're gonna go deep. We're gonna make sure all the characters die and they're all evil and it's a sad ending. But we don't want to show any blood with the kids, and we don't want to show the kids dying or anything like that. But we want to show how bad we are. It's like they really went.
it's like, okay, we're gonna go all out.
Like,
Just
they wrote
kidding.
some of the scenes one day when they were like really drunk, and then they wrote some of them in the other days when they just saw like a Lion King or something.
Yeah, right? They're like, oh, I don't know if I can do
Yeah.
this. Maybe not.
I mean, for me, I think really, I mean, I keep going back to it, but really my thesis for this movie is that the whole movie is incredibly surface level. And it comes back to it again in the end, because in the end, it's just straightforward slasher. Like, it's just like the kill, and then it's like, oh, then Lewis gets killed, like, by Rachel with the thing through his, like, it's very surface level. It's very, this is just what's happening. There's nothing else to it. You know, in the original movie, the ending of the original movie is almost cerebral. It almost reminds you of like something out of Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's like almost seems dreamlike. It seems like they've entered a different world when Lewis goes into the house at the end of the first one. And it's you get the sense that the whatever power is coming from the Micmac burial ground, it's almost like emanating. there's this whole area now, it's taking control. But here it's just, there's a girl with a knife, so she stabs this person, and then this other person stabs that person, and so that's the movie. They stab, and that's it.
I think they just gave up at the very end.
Yeah,
Like, well, fuck it.
I had a feel. I thought that like they were gonna go with this whole, because earlier on in the movie when they're first explaining the burial, when Judd's explaining to Lewis how to bury the cat, and he says like, and then later he comes back and then he goes over to talk to Judd again. And he's like, he's yours now, as in like, oh, so like now now Lewis has control over this cat, like, or this cat will always be around, because then. I was like, oh, is that going to be maybe something that they might go into? And then when Ellie comes back, and then she kind of like gravitates towards him, like, oh, he'll talk to him about how she's going to kill the mom because like she trusts him. I'm like, oh, so they are going towards this whole like, oh yeah, she belongs to him now. And then like, no, they don't. She doesn't. She belongs to herself. She'll do whatever the fuck she wants. I thought they were going to go deeper, but then they didn't.
I also thought another thing with that is I actually thought they were going to go and do a route where it's almost like, I thought this would have been interesting if they had it, which they didn't again, is that if Ellie was almost doing it out of like a self-protection kind of thing. Like with Judd, it seemed like that because Judd wanted to kill her because Judd knew that it was evil. So she killed Judd. So that kind of made sense. And then same thing with Rachel because Rachel wasn't accepting her. But then when she's killing Rachel, she's like, you didn't help me on the road.
It's like, bitch, you're already dead.
Yeah,
you're hit by a truck. Like, what?
That, I was like, I don't know. I don't like that.
When, again, going back to I know this was a while ago, we talked about superpowers. I feel like she definitely did because how'd she get into the house without making any noise? She's like picked the lock or something. And like she's always everywhere. She got back into the other house without him noticing.
Yeah, no, it's like Michael Myers.
Yeah, she literally has no rules. She can teleport. She always has a kitchen knife, and they alluded to it earlier with the whole Halloween thing.
And she's wearing a mask.
Exactly.
Yeah. They literally just watched like 3 movies before making this, and they're like, "Yeah, that's it. Let's just put all 3."
So she definitely
none of those 3 was the original Pet Semetary.
Yeah.
They also burned the book along with Judd's house.
Oh my god. This movie.
And
it didn't have any Stephen King cameos, which I
didn't
expect, but it would have been a nice pleasant surprise if
was he in the original?
Yes. Yeah, he was the priest doing the funeral.
Oh.
Okay. He was like, ooh.
Yeah.
This movie pisses me off.
Okay, so one thing I will say, that one thing I actually did like, very small thing, but I have to commend it. And
the end credits. Okay, same.
No, the end credits were bad because it was like the bad version.
That's true.
It was like a chick chick and then end credits.
Yeah. No, is that I really like the sound editing of this movie. I like the way it sounded. I thought whenever Lewis went into the woods and the sound of the woods, the sound of the loons and the wood cracking, I thought that, and just like the sound of like you hear things like off in the distance, or just the way it worked in surround sound is like you would hear something pass from the left side to the right with the trucks.
Yeah.
I thought this movie sounded really good, and I actually did like the soundtrack as well, like the score as well. Specifically when Lewis goes to bury both Church and Ellie. Like they do this like weird almost synth but not quite thing, and I thought that was really good. So I thought this movie sounded very good. But the lighting was too dark, it was too muted, it wasn't like everything seemed gray or brown, which there was like didn't make any sense. Because here's the thing.
Or blue.
Yeah, like
a blue hue.
When people think of nature, you think of like greens and browns and stuff like that. But when you're actually in wood, like there's more than just that. But when you see it in a movie and it's just that, it seems unnatural. So I thought the lighting wasn't very good, and neither was the cinematography. Another thing I want to point out that's really bad is, you know what we laughed at in the original movie? Dale Midkiff, who plays Lewis in the original movie, is terrible.
Yes, he's horrible.
Jason Clarke, who plays Lewis in the new movie, is like not better. He's bad as well.
See, I was trying to like figure that out. I was like, do I like this guy better than the original guy?
There was parts where he was good, and there's parts where he wasn't good.
You know what's funny? He is in real life. He's English. He has a thick English accent. I definitely heard that a few times.
Really?
Like it came through. Like there are parts where he'd be like, Ellie, or that's a
Ellie. That's Scottish. Ellie.
But I heard it come through. I was like, this guy's not a very good actor.
Andrew Lincoln shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else specific that you guys want to bring up one way or the other?
Yeah. I feel like they, the way that I was saying earlier, and you said that you like the sound, and I liked the whole vibe that it had in some cases. I feel like that comes from money, in the way that this is like, if I am remembering correctly, this is the next Stephen King movie coming from a book after it.
What's the next big budget, big Hollywood?
Exactly. So, judging off of the fact that it was like extremely successful, this movie probably had that extreme budget and extreme ability to do whatever they really wanted, and they used it to make a good horror film, and that's it. It was a horror film, like you always said, it's a entrance horror film, but they could have gone so much deeper, but they did what would be good for an average audience, and an average audience would come out of there saying, "Oh, I was scared. Oh, that was cool at the ending. Oh, I didn't expect that."
Yeah,
and that's something that just comes with money, in my opinion. That's what they did use.
I think that I got it vibes watching the movie, because like it was a remake that came out 2017 that was actually a good remake of the original source material, because it changed some things. Because I'm thinking comparing it to the original miniseries, the It miniseries, but it also stayed true to the book and what the book means. Whereas this movie, they just changed things because it would be funny.
Well, I think they were trying to get their own vibe across from doing that, especially the whole change with Ellie and Gage. They're like, oh, well, we're gonna change it up. It'll be different, and people will like it because it's different than the original movie and the book. Well,
yeah, they really went all in with that.
It sucked. Like, it took it away. And I said to you, when we were doing, like, what we're looking forward to in 2019, I was like, this one is going to be a hit or a complete miss. And for me, complete miss. All the way.
Yeah. Like, you can still change things from the original source material. Like, with it, like, you can, like, the big changes in the original book, it takes place in the 1950s. And the movie, it takes place in the 1980s. That's a huge change, because change in terms of the culture, in terms of the technology that's available, and things like that.
But they did it in a way that it was well executed. It was like almost graceful the way they did it.
It made sense.
And it went along with the storyline every 27 years, right?
Yeah. And this, I think it was
just changes
kind of
because...
Yeah. There was no reason for it to be changed.
Well, the thing is, I feel like there's definitely different groups of crowds with every movie and book thing, and where it's a remake of a movie or a making of a movie from a book. There's always going to be crowds that want it to be the exact same. There's going to be crowds that want it to be same with some differences, and there's going to be crowds that I already know the storyline. I want a whole new storyline. So even in like the culture that goes directly deep into these movies, there's going to be people who are going to look at it and say, "Oh, I'm glad that they did something different. I've already read the book, seen the original, seen whatever that sequel was, and then I want something new." But then we're kind of like in the fact of Marlena's I want it to be the same because it was so good, and Connor's like, I want it to be the same with some differences, like it. So
see, I wanted this movie to kind of reflect more of the elements that weren't featured in the first movie, like the Wendigo. I was like so excited for that. Yeah. I was like, yeah, like that's great because they talk about it in the book and they didn't talk about it in the movie and all this shit, right? Also, I kind of wanted Judd's wife Norma to be in this movie as well, because I think that would have added a lot of depth and character growth to Judd. But again, she just wasn't put in there, and I'm like, why? She would have made the story a lot richer. And I definitely think with this movie they cut out the whole thing with Rachel and her parents and like how they don't get along, and it's like, but that is a critical turning point for Lewis. Like, they're picking things that they want to expand on, but then don't expand on them ever again in the movie, and then just don't include stuff that actually matters. And I don't know, like, I'm not trying to say I need an exact replica of the book, but I think they need to include elements that would add a lot more depth to the story. And they didn't. And, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else that you guys want to say?
Yes. So when I came into this movie, going into it, I kind of went into the idea of my last horror movie that I saw was Us. and then this was the next movie, knowing that I was gonna be in this podcast about it, I was looking, oh, okay, so I'm just gonna like look into it, I'm gonna pay attention to the details, and that's kind of where I got fucked up, because I was like, oh, I'm paying attention to these details. Oh, does he own the cat? No, he doesn't. Okay, whatever. Maybe
Well,
like
that's because...
they're gonna bring up the Wendigo later. They brought him now. Oh, okay, no, they're actually not. And that's where you could talk about it as being an entry level horror movie, and which is what it is, and it's completely opposite from Jordan Peele horror movies, where you have to look into it and you look forward to paying attention to every detail and what it really means. And that's kind of the future of horror, in my opinion. And that's why a lot of horror fans are seeing this future horror direction that it's going in, and they're not liking this one, which could have been released in maybe like 2005 and been a hit then.
Yeah, because like half the fun of those kinds of movies is just figuring out what does he mean?
Yeah,
by this,
and I think, I mean, even if you compare it to another Stephen King movie like The Shining.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels there.
Because here's the thing, I think that sometimes you can ruin a movie experience for yourself when you're just watching it to figure something out instead of just watching it for fun. Yeah. But then there are movies like The Shining where you do watch it to figure things out for that deeper meaning. Mm-hmm. And like Justin said,
Jordan Peele movies.
Yeah.
This movie was not that.
Like a good example is like if you're watching Friday the 13th Part 4 and you're like, what is his motive behind this? Like, there has to be a deeper meaning. And no, there isn't. He's just insane, and yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
But they went full out with that.
Yeah.
They actually did that. Like,
yeah.
They didn't try to say, oh, maybe Jason does do this, and like maybe there is a reason why. And like
they at least acknowledged
he just wants
it
to
for
kill people because his mother.
Yeah. Alrighty. Anything else? You guys want to go to the wrap up?
I think so.
Alrighty. Well. So this is the wrap up where we give
rate it.
Last thoughts, and we give it a rating out of 10. We would rate it out of 10
cats,
churches
meows.
7 lost Wendigo heads.
So out of 10, Marlena, any final thoughts?
Out of 10, 2 churches out of 10, and no, I don't have anything else to say.
Right.
My mom always told me, if you don't have anything nice to say, then just don't say it.
That's why we made a long podcast about it.
That's right.
Justin?
I would rate this 6.8 churches out of full churches.
We only do 0.5 or full points, but you can do
6.8% of church.
I do a 6.8 churches. Out of 10.
Okay. Well, just for math's sake, I'll round that up to 7.
Yeah, 7.
I'll give it 4 churches out of 10. I think that it's... The only reason I would give it 4 as opposed to giving it something lesser is that it actually had... The filmmakers did give it the potential to be something great, but they didn't make something great. So that's why I would give it a 4 as opposed to just a straight up 1. The potential was there, I think, but it just didn't deliver.
I feel like, there was such a high going into this, and it's hard to match up with that, regardless of the budget you have and like the ideas that you have. It's even when there's a script